So, without further ado, it's 7:30. Let's get started. And by the way, if you have any question, just write something in the chat, and I will be happy to answer. If I do have an answer, if I don't have an answer straight away, I will try to find out, and I will send you an email later. So let's get started with 2 pages, because today we're going to work in Business Central as always, because training must always be relevant, and so we must use our sandbox environments, our training demo environments to make it more relevant. But I also have a page here, and I'm using this Miro, I'm not sure how to call it. I actually prefer something like that to Visio, which is a very good tool that I use at work, but this one is more intuitive. So let's get started with a business case, or even better, a process diagram, because processes before technology always, right? People before processes, processes before technology. Whenever we learn a business application, whenever we learn new software, remember, technology is the last thing we're going to cover. As counterintuitive as it might sound, right? People first, culture, their knowledge, right? Their expectations, their challenge, their problems. Then we translate that into business processes, and lastly, we'll look at technology. So what are we going to today? We're going to cover master production schedule. So production planning for items, inventory, which is rather complex and therefore requires serial numbers. Let's start with a quick diagram. Most organizations start with either a forecast. Let me make it here. When they have, let's say, an idea or an estimate of what they're going to produce, for, again, to make sure that they have enough materials, right? Materials, they can procure materials in advance, consumables, they can plan their capacity. In addition to that, forecasts, whether it translates into demand or demand is off the forecast, then we also have demand, right? And so forecast first, then demand, and then once we have the demand, we are going to drive, or we're going to start also what's often called MPS, the Master Production Schedule, which then also drives MRP, right? By the way, these two are not just for manufacturing. They are not. I know what you think. MPS stands for Master Production Schedule. What's not about manufacturing? How can it possibly be not just about manufacturing? Business Central, like most modern ERPs, supports MPS for purchase requisition. Material requirement planning is the same. That's probably something for another training, right? But again, do not think that MPS and MRP apply to production only. I will show you in a moment also in Business Central why that actually this system makes it quite obvious. MPS and MRP can absolutely be used for purchase requisitions, okay? But again, something for another day. So what happens now when we have forecast and we have demand together? Well, at some point, one or the two should drive MPS, or maybe, again, both. But what happens with demand-driven supply, master production schedule, and forecast? Well, they are rather different. And so let me show you what I mean by that. So forecast typically creates what we call JIC, which is supply chain terminology that stands for just in case. In case the forecast ends up to be real demand, we want to produce items, we want to schedule our orders. But really, what happens to real demand? Real demand are customer sales, right? Customer sales orders, customer requests. By the way, this concept applies to projects too, not just sales. I know one of you in particular in this meeting have that kind of challenge. This demand here is almost always sales. Do not assume that this applies to customer sales orders. It applies to project demand, CapEx inventory, right? But it also applies to a distribution system where a retailer with different distribution centers creates demand and forecasts for their regional distribution centers. And so we need to pull demand from one depot from our main production site. This applies to large organizations with different sites and stores. For example, wholesale and retail is very common. So if forecast drives just in case, demand drives just in time, which means that we produce and we start manufacturing only and only if we have sales. And therefore, this line now, you can probably guess that it's time to move it, because demand just in time, MPS. And so this is where product design allow us to set up the policies about replenishment for specific items, while just in case forecasts can also generate MPS. And so it's our decision is going to be whether we can use both forecasts and real demand, only forecast for certain items, and only demand for other items. In this case, we're going to look at this scenario just in time for MPS because it's serial numbers, okay? So we have MPS and we have MRP. Once we run the MPS between these two, typically we have the released production plan. And so the release production plan, when you create MPS and MRP and you manage that separately, then the release production plan must drive MRP, not the other way around. In purchases, we don't have that, okay? Because we don't have the concept of a released purchase plan, because every purchase in Business Central is firm planned purchase requisition. In F&O, it's a bit more complicated, but in Business Central, it's quite simple. So far, nothing wrong. But now, what about the serialization? Because now we have the need here to create output, right? Because it's time to, let me align these two and see if I can align center. There we go. And I move it this way. And so now it's time to work. And so the shop floor will start working as they consume materials, right? From the, not really from the MPS, but again, we have the actual production. Sorry, not from here. I made a mistake. There we go. Okay, the release production plan pulls MRP. MRP generates purchase requisitions. The purchase requisition goes back to consumption and output. Okay, and so let me make it clear here. We have consumption and output, consumption and but when we have output, and now we have the serialization, because again, today is about serial numbers. And now here, the shop floor needs to take care of what? Needs to serialize the output. The serialization, hopefully I'm getting the right, which now needs to do what? Needs to look at fulfillment. Because before we can fulfill the order, the demand, right, then the orders, the output must be serialized. Now, in most organizations, this is what happens. But if the fulfillment eventually needs to link back to, let me see if I can change this from here. So there we go. Customer orders, fulfillment. Customer orders is demand. The output and the serialization creates the fulfillment. But now we have, you can see the complexity it's quite obvious. The serializing output before fulfillment is where we can make mistakes. Because how do the fulfillment know what to choose, what to pick based on the actual demand? If we have advanced warehouse management, then we have to schedule our picking tasks. We need to book the couriers, right? And in some cases, demand of serialized items drives or might drive specification, product design, because not all products that we're going to generate, right, going to produce are the same. We have different versions, right, different colors, right, different sizes, for example, because in this case, we might have a customer order for hundreds and hundreds, maybe, of these products. And so we have the necessity here to link demand to, oops, I selected the wrong one. Demand to serialization, so that the serialization happens here and everything else will carry that serialization, so that we eliminate this step. Essentially, we're going from here, something like this, and we eliminate complexity where it hurts during the operations. Because the last thing you want is to add more complexity to shop floor, logistics, and warehouse, where by nature, the complexity is already quite high, and this is where we can make mistakes. So what we're going to do now, we are going to incorporate serialization into just-in-time. And so we fix it here. We make it possible for the system to create serialization from the just-in-time step, so that MPS, production order, and consumption output carry the serialization, and so we can ship exactly what it's on the demand. And believe it or not, Business Central does it so well, you don't need to do anything. You just need to work on configuration. And so let's start with today's demo. First, let me go back to the main screen and let me show you what I did here. I'm using a generic sandbox Great Britain localization because I mostly work in the UK. I have clients in other regions, in other countries of the world, where we use different localizations, but for this demo, the localization is irrelevant. Okay, it works in the same way pretty much in every localization. So the first thing we look at is product design, because remember what I said, this part is about how we design a product, right? Whether the product is a just-in-case or a just-in-time, we define it when we create the product, or in Business Central terminology, the items, right? So here I have the item. Here I have this new combi oven double door. Hopefully, I'm thinking about this is not really a copyrighted material, but again, it's just for demo purposes. So hopefully, whatever company produces these ovens will not sue me. By the way, regardless. So this is an oven. It's an industrial oven for restaurants, right, and hotel and catering companies. It's very expensive. We manufacture it and we sell it to organizations that buy them in bulk. We also have the opportunity to service them, right? So service management, again, for another training day. So what happens now, we have this product and we have its standard cost, its unit price, all things related to financials that we don't care about today. We have the routing and the production bill of materials. Now, even though the manufacturing policy says make to stock, this is one of the many areas in the manufacturing module that can be quite misleading. The manufacturing policy make to stock has got nothing to do with replenishment policies, just in time or just in case. I know it might sound confusing. For most of you, this might be pretty much the same thing. Unfortunately, they are not. Manufacturing policy in Business Central does something different. It's about the multi-order versus multi-level bill of materials. Again, something for another day. Whether this product is replenished with a just-in-time or a just-in-case, with forecast or with demand, actual demand is defined not here, but in the planning tab, because it's all part of production planning in a way. Again, the same rules apply to planning for purchase requisition. This is not just about manufacturing, right? So reordering policy order, we know we have 4 reordering policies in Business Central, including a blank reordering policy, which means we reorder them manually. We don't want to use the planning engine when we choose the blank option. We choose the reordering policy order, which is the just in time, by definition, just in time, which means we only make this product if we have real demand. Now, you can also use forecasts for this policy, but again, there are exceptions. So when organization says we make to order, right? Our ovens are made to order. We don't keep them in stock, are made to order. The tendency may be, or let me say, oh, make to order. There we go, make to order. That's exactly what my client wants, right? Wrong. Unfortunately, doesn't work. You can see I can actually change these two, and it will not change what's going to happen in this demo, right? So something to remember. Terminology, it's part and parcel of learning a new system. So we have a reordering policy. I keep the order tracking because I like using dynamic planning. When I work with the planning engine, it gives me the flexibility to use order promising as together with the planning worksheet. Again, something more complex we're not going to cover today. So once I have my just-in-time policy set up here, and I also have a stock keeping unit because I use multiple locations in this sandbox. In this case, it might not be necessary, but because this is a demo sandbox with lots of locations, I need to use a stock keeping unit. Now, specific organizations might not need that, all right? And what's special about this combi oven in terms of just-in-time and serialization? This is where we define it. So the replenishment tab shows 2 very important fields. Actually, one in this case, which is the most important, the lot size. With lot size set to 1, I tell Business Central that I only want 1 oven in a production order. And in this case, it will help me show you how serialization works. Nothing stops me from changing this into 2, 3, 4, 5 ovens in each production order. It really depends on the shop floor capacity. Okay, it makes it easy to show you how it works. But this ideal should be how many ovens can we produce when we start an order. And so with lot size to 1, we have a proper just in time 1 product per order. What else do we need? This is the tracking side. And notice how I used my item tracking serial number specific. It must look like this. Serial number specific, and of course, when we enable specific, you can see the warehouse tracking is enabled. I once saw an organization where this was on and this was off. And this is the best way to get your inventory out of sync. And one of my clients 2 years ago went live with this setup. We found out about the error a day after go live. We had to spend, a colleague and I, the entire night in the office because we have to go live again. A developer with about 20 years of experience in dynamics, couldn't fix it. The inventory was so compromised. So I'm not sure why Microsoft allows me to do that. Something like this. It makes your inventory essentially unusable. So remember to turn it on. But I also have a serial number here, or a number series, and this is the key part. Because you say most consultants, and you probably see something like this. Let me see what it does. There we go. Most consultants do something like this. Well, you have serial numbers. You want your system to generate new numbers. Let's just put a serial numbers here. Right? Serial numbers. Wrong one. And let's start with a serial number that looks something like this. This SN0001, and there we go. There we go. Most consultants, junior consultants would tell you, well, there we go. Now your system can generate numbers. However, this is not and cannot and should not be a default serial number, the phone number. Organizations that manufacture complex equipment, and I go back here, work on specific demand driven by the customers and want to serialize them. Their items they probably need, and they very often need specific serialization policies per item category. And in some cases, those are even demanded by the customer. The customer says, I need 2,000 ovens because I have a restaurant chain and I have 50 restaurants, well, 50 restaurants, and we need 100 ovens, okay? 2 ovens per restaurant. And they might actually tell you what they what kind of serial numbers they want. It's not uncommon. However, at least you should have a serial number policy per product. And in this case, you can see my combi ovens follow specific combination of CB0001, last used 259, because so far we managed to manufacture and sell 259 of these particular ovens. So the company is doing quite well. This serialization, which is bespoke, which means the numbers only apply to this kind of oven, and the just-in-time policy, together with the lot size, will essentially automate the serialization between demand and MPS. Down to the point where I have the production order. Consumption and output will follow, and therefore fulfillment, it's now a formality. We have the ovens. The ovens will be created with the actual serial number, which the system will create for us. Think about how much time we save. So let's look at a scenario here. We have, let me see if I have there we go. Let me create a new sales order because I don't have a sales order. So sales order, this is live. So let's see if I got the configuration wrong. Let's see what's going to happen. I think I got it right. So we got an order from Trade Research, and they wanted, again, this is my sandboxes in the past. Actually, let me make it to today. No, actually, there we go. Last Monday, Trade Research reached out to me and says, you know what, we want 50 ovens for a new restaurant. And we ship from the right location, because in this location, I got full WMS, and I really prefer to work with full WMS when I work on this kind of demos, because companies that need that kind of complexity in the shop floor are more likely to require the same kind of complexity when they manage warehouse operations. You cannot really have a complex shop floor and simple warehouse. You might have the opposite. You might have complex warehouse and fulfillment and inventory management and a simple shop floor. But again, that's another conversation. So once I have this order, and now let me go back to, we are here, right? This is the actual demand, right? We're going to go to the demand, and this is what I want to do. I want to manage the serialization here. I don't want to postpone it. I don't want to wait until the shop floor is done. But the good thing is that I can automate this. I've seen organizations spending thousands, tens of thousands, customizing this part of the system, which is completely unnecessary. When I am here on the item tracker line, the system knows that we need to fulfill, we need to create 50. And because I have the serial tracking enabled, as with my Combi oven, with a dedicated number series. By the way, I can even choose a customization here, right? And so this one is going to be tray research 001, right? And increment by 1 and give me 50 serial numbers for tray research, right? And I can also use the serial number information here so that Business Central will actually create the serial numbers for me, which will be automatically linked to production. So now I have production orders. In a moment, I will create them with a planning engine and reservation at item tracking level. Now, so I can create the customized serial numbers, or I can let Business Central create the numbers for me. It doesn't matter. Let me show you. There we go. You must demand your number. Absolutely, because I told the system that for my Combi ovens, you can see it's validating the Combi oven because it knows that the serial numbers should be essentially applied here. Okay, so let me see number series along numbers. There we go. Let me go back. Let me actually just do it, and so using the standard, right? So. I'm going to create 50 serial numbers using my Combi oven. And there we go. I got my 50 Combi ovens, double door with the serialization that I want. Again, I could have created customized numbers if the setup was correct. The system allows me to do that, but then I got a warning, right? It tells me that the item is not available. And if I try to close it, I will get an error. You do not have enough inventory. Of course, I do not have inventory because I'm doing just in time. Unfortunately, the system at this stage does not validate that. And so this indicates that you don't have availability. You can see in the availability field, it says, no, can't do it. Are you sure you want to continue? Now, here, most users and consultants say, oh, hold on a moment. I can't do this. I need to go back and make the orders. No. You can see this is not an error message. It is a confirmation message. It's got a question mark. Are you sure you want to keep going? Yes, I do. And now the system is thinking. You can see what's doing. It's updating the item reservation entry table, which is a rather complex database tables that links supply and demand. And because I enable dynamic low-level tracking, it is essentially preparing the pegging using supply chain terminology for me, which means now I can go back and run the master production schedule, right? How do we do that? With a planning worksheet. And now I need to tell the system that I want to recreate a regenerative plan. We're not really regenerating anything here because, again, the plan in the back end, in the background, has already been developed. But again, we're going to trigger a new plan here. I choose MPS only. And let's say I start today, or actually, let me start in the past because I created an order for today, and I want to end, let's say, at the end of the month. A month usually it's okay. It's a good planning horizon. I'm going to filter on combi oven because I've got other items that will show here because there's a demo environment that I use for all my clients. And let me put a filter on white, but otherwise I'll get lots of items. What do you expect to see now that we have the item with lot size 1, a just-in-time policy, order by order, and serializations? That's what I got. That's what I got. I got 50 production orders. By the way, everything shows here to be delivered on the same day. But again, that's because I didn't put anything on the planning. We can talk about the planning side, whether to schedule 5 ovens at a time, 20 ovens at a time, or everything that needs to go out on one consignment because we have a big factory. That's really about how we manage the fulfillment, right? And how we do capacity planning, maybe. Again, but it's not really about this. This message, this workshop. So everything shows attention. The starting date of my plan, the 28th of November, is before working days. Absolutely. I did it on purpose. So what I'm going to do now, I'm not going to do it for all the 50 items because otherwise it would be quite ridiculous. Unless I can, let me see if I choose my settings. And if I tell Business Central that I'm working in the past, will I get a new plan? What do you think? I think I should get a new plan. So shall we try once more? Because I don't want to do that 50 times. This is the good thing about doing it live. So calculate the plan, and I'm going to start here. And everything is okay. Let's say if I manage to trick the system into thinking it's actually October 2025 for planning purposes. And so, no, the system didn't get fooled. Okay, so it's actually a lot cleverer than what I thought. Doesn't matter. So let me accept a few messages. I'm not going to accept all 50, right? And here, by the way, I can change the due date. I can change the start time. There is one thing that I cannot do, though. You can see the due date is the 1st of December, 2025, because I already have a reservation. And why does the system do that? Why do I have that? It's because now the link between the planning suggestion and the demand are linked to a hard reservation, which is also based on the serial number. So now that I want to, let's say, accept the actual message, again, it's 20 orders, it's not 50, but hopefully you get the idea that it's all the same. Production orders are going to be firm planned. And now, if I check my firm planned production orders, I will see 1 order per oven. That's because lot size is 1. And of course, I need to look at the planning. Again, planning and scheduling, it's something for another demo. It's probably an hour. It can be quite complex. Let me show you what happens here. This is what we got. This serialization still shows not available. Of course, it's not available because I haven't started yet. But the serialization has been transferred from the sales order to the planning to the actual production order. And so you can see what I'm doing now. We have essentially moved the serialization here from just in time. The serialization has been applied to the MPS because it was already there when I ran my plan. Now what I need to do, I need to maybe select a few orders and start releasing my plan. Right, change status. I'm going to start, release it if I need to update the cost, because I didn't change anything. I don't want to. 5 production orders and now have their status released. And now we got, you can see errors about bin content because the system is trying to, you can see, consume items that are forward flushed, and that's what happens when we're trying to push forward again consumption. In this case, you can see I got the error here about one of the items that I put in the bill of materials, and you can see SP bomb and so on, which is, again, I'm not going to look at the execution of the actual order, but you can see the firm plan production orders include, of course, you can see the components, and this is about the items that the system wants to forward flush, which you can see forward. These are non-inventory items, screws, 200 screws to make an oven, and they're forward flush as I start the operations, right? I don't have enough inventory, so the system doesn't let me. But again, fulfillment, the actual consumption and output is not part of this demo. Once we have the output right, once the order is finished, what I'm going to end up with, I will end up with the ovens, and the ovens serialization will be transferred from the output, from the production order to the output. And now all I need to do, fulfillment, essentially will take care of the rest, because the serial number will be already attached to demand. And you can see how this part is pretty much automated, and it's part of product design, right? And when we create and we launch a new range of ovens, or maybe we get an order for bespoke ovens, which are private label, right? Let's say, I don't know, a restaurant chain. I don't know, Gordon Ramsay wants new ovens for all the restaurants. And so these are going to be Gordon Ramsay branded new ovens. I will make a variant of this oven, and difference between the standard oven and the Gordon Ramsay branded oven is that I might have a different serial numbers, or I can simply enable manual numbers. I can tell the system that I want 50, 200, 2,000 numbers only for my customers. And that will essentially drive all the automation from demand to just-in-time. Serialization will be automated, will be passed to the plan. It will pass to the production orders. By the way, we can have then sub-assemblies and semi-product and WIP items also linked to the serial number, and the consumption and the output and the fulfillment will all be essentially managed with the link created by order tracking and the serialization. Because the last thing that I want to show you is that if I now choose, there we go, quantity of production orders, quantity of sales orders. If I look at a production order and I show the document, I should be able, there we go. You can see order tracking, which I enabled when I put the order tracking. A message tells me that there is a link between the sales order and this production order. And if I click here, I will find the sales order linked to the production order. This is not a link at serial number level. This is a link at planning level. Therefore, I can use it on lot tracking items, batch tracking items, right? And again, the order tracking using MPS and just-in-time works even without serialization. I was talking to a partner, Microsoft partner in the US a few months ago. It was last year, November. And he was telling me that they had to customize the client Business Central because they needed this to track demand plan and NPS, but they didn't have serial numbers or not numbers. And so in Alfredo, we had to spend a fortune because even though the client does not use serial numbers or not numbers, we need to track supply and demand. And Business Central doesn't do it. And I said, man, did you check this? This does exactly that. So how much you spend, I'm not going to tell you how much you spent, but it wasn't cheap. And now the client has got a customization that creates serial numbers automatically, and it's not even needed. And so, but this is another story. So 30 minutes on the clock. Actually, I think I run it a bit out of time as usual. I'm not very good with time, but we managed to cover everything we wanted to cover. There we go, 12 minutes behind schedule. So it's amazing to see 20 of you for something so niche, so advanced, so complex. There we go. Julius, thank you for great demo. You're very welcome, Julius. You and I have been in contact for 2 or 3 years now. Eventually, we will start working on one project together one day, right? Because we must, right? So I hope you find it beneficial. I hope you find it interesting. Casper, you're very welcome, sir. And I hope you're doing well. Christian, you're very welcome. Thank you very much. Again, any question, Jari, you're very welcome. Let me know. Send me an email. And again, you will receive tomorrow. Anthea, you're very welcome. You will see the recording. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of the evening, and I will see you all online, maybe in a couple of weeks, for another training session here live on Microsoft Teams. You're very welcome, Vasil, sir. Nice to hear from you. Excellent. Thank you all. Good night.